Hey, what's up, everybody? It is your boy Toxie Boyo, and I'm coming back from my break a little bit earlier than expected, kind of, sort of. I mean, you're probably not going to see my face for a little while. We'll see how all of that stuff goes because things are kind of in transition. However, I really wanted to discuss Cyberpunk 2077 with you guys. I want to say a couple of things right off the bat. I'm not here to bash the game. I'm not here to shit on CDPR, to um to beat a dead horse. Basically, I'm not going to insult anything or anybody over the course of this video. That is not the point. The point is to kind of try to make a bit of a commentary on the gaming industry as a whole, especially where AAA games that are published by these big corporations are concerned. Now, CDPR rose to prominence mostly due to the Witcher series, which, from what I can tell and what I understand, are some of the best RPGs ever made. I played The Witcher 3. It didn't really catch me. I kind of got bored. I'm sorry. Please don't unsubscribe just because of that. Now, because of how they got to where they are, I was always going to be a little bit concerned as to whether or not Cyberpunk could be an equally good game because it's so different. Also, this is a completely random thing. Cyberpunk 2077 is kind of a terrible title. Genre setting? Why would you call your game genre setting? That's weird, but Cyberpunk is something wildly different, you know? For a while we thought it was going to be this third person action RPG with gunplay and all this other stuff that we thought was going to be in the game, and then little by little it was taken out, which once they said that you wouldn't be in third person even in cutscenes, I got very discouraged and I stopped wanting to actually buy the game because it's like, did you not have time to make it in third person? But but I was actually going to okay, I want to say that I have not played the game yet, but I was going to because I did get in touch with CDPR and I was supposed to be getting a code for the game, but me going on break, I was not going to be able to get a video out about it at a good time to justify getting the code, so I was like, just give it to somebody else who's actually going to use it. But I just, I want to say, no matter how good this game had turned out, how revolutionary the gunplay was, how crazy the RPG elements had been, how deep the character customization was, it was never going to live up to the hype. CDPR and the community all hyped this game up to such a degree that no matter what, it would have been a disappointment. It could have been the greatest game of all time. But that's the thing. Everybody expected it to be that. For really no reason at all, with no true information apart from just the history of the studio, we expected them to create the greatest RPG of all time. Eventually, the greatest first-person shooter of all time, the greatest open world game of all time. It's supposed to have the best combat, the best driving, the best everything. And it's like, how and why? Why did we come to expect that? I mean, The Witcher doesn't have the greatest combat, the greatest exploration, the greatest horse physics, any of that stuff. I don't think The Witcher is the greatest at anything that it does. From what I've experienced, it's a perfectly serviceable game, but there was no reason to think that they could go from The Witcher to making the weapon to surpass Fallout New Vegas. You know what I mean? Because Fallout New Vegas is typically considered to be the greatest first person RPG of all time, if not Skyrim. Um, I don't think Skyrim's all that good. But for some odd reason, people expected that this game would just defeat the rest of gaming. Like, I get it. Like, you're rooting for this basically indie studio to put out this AAA game that's gonna just blow away the competition. Move over, Watch Dogs. Move over, Assassin's Creed Odyssey. Move over, GTA. Make room for Cyberpunk. But that wasn't really very realistic, especially when about 7 years went by between the game's initial announcement and us seeing anything about it. And then eventually, the more we saw about it, the more nervous I got, you know? And then there's the infamous, we leave greed to other companies, and then they actually are sticking microtransactions in the game. Now, here's my thing, right? As far as the state of the game upon release, I think it is as playable as it could have possibly been without getting delayed again. Should it have gotten delayed again? Absolutely. A full another year. It should not have come out on PS4 or Xbox One, and it shouldn't have even come out on PC just yet. Because here's my thing, right? I don't care if you, Erica, are having a perfect experience with the game. You haven't had any frame drops, you haven't had any crashes, no bugs to speak of. You do not represent the 8 million people that bought this game. These game breaking bugs and these terrible performance issues, these loading errors, all these sorts of things are affecting people on a wide scale. It's not about you and what you're experiencing with the game because you are not the entire consumer base. Look up Cyberpunk 2077 bug compilations, right? There's probably like 100 different videos with dozens of clips in them, and they're all different clips because players are just playing the game and shit is going wrong. It's not even about players trying to exploit the game or find bugs or anything like that. It's not like that. The game is just not functioning properly. And I've seen people with really good PCs have the game freeze, crash, stutter, frames drop, things load in incorrectly, some things start floating for no reason. There are still terrible issues with the game, regardless of how good your PC is and how good the game has been running for you. That being said, I do blame CDPR for not showing how the game actually functions on PS4 and Xbox One right before it came out. Because what I'm tired of hearing is, well, how dare you play it on PS4, this old ass hardware, and expect it to run well? Here's the thing. Cyberpunk 2077 was announced before the PS4 was. And that being the case, it was supposed to come out in April this year. Could you imagine if it had come out in April this year? How unplayable it would have been. Because think about this. The Xbox Series X had been announced by that point, but we hadn't seen anything about what it could do. The PS5 hadn't even been shown by the time that this game was supposed to release. So, if it had come out in April like it was supposed to, as far as console goes, that would have been your only option. You can't blame people that play on console for wanting the game to work properly on the $500 or $400 box they bought it on. Because here's the thing about PC gaming, right? PC gamers, please shut up. PC gamers really annoy me. Because here's the thing. Gamers do not always care about getting 200 frames or having 4K or ray tracing or anything like that. A lot of gamers don't want to spend $3,000 on their machine just to play games. So, since console makes up the majority of the gaming market and PS4 makes up most of the console market, more people statistically are going to play this game on PS4 than on any other platform. So it should work. And then if you want to blame how old the hardware is, the PS5 and Series X are out. Why is there not a PS5 or Series X version of the game? Why does CDPR not show anything about how the game actually functions on console prior to its release? You know? Here's what I think should have happened, right? I think it should have come out sometime in the spring next year for PC. And then about a year later, landed on PS5 and Series X. Because it's obviously going to take extra time to scale this game back so that it can run on consoles. That's just how that works. But they clearly did not have time to do that. Now, this is not the developer's fault. This is the brass. This is the people that make all the decisions at CDPR. This is the shareholders and the people that give out the grants for these games to get made. None of this is on the developers. I think that the marketing team and the legal team made a horrible decision in marketing this game and failed to give you an accurate picture or depiction of how the game is actually going to perform when it lands in your hands, on your controller, on your keyboard, whatever you play it on. We were basically falsely advertised to. We expected the game to be one thing, and we got something very, very different. Now, this is far from the first game to have crazy high expectations on it, only to crumble. Assassin's Creed Unity, Ghost Recon Breakpoint, Fallout 76, Destiny, stuff like this happens. But the more it happens, the less acceptable it becomes because these studios should learn. They should see what the problem is and adjust accordingly. Now, could this game be like No Man's Sky and get way better in 3 years? Possibly. I can't tell you that that's impossible because, I mean, it happened with No Man's Sky. And No Man's Sky was like a worst case scenario at first. Like, goodness gracious. All in all, though, as I said, every single time a game comes out that is supposed to shake up the industry or shake up its genre or it's supposed to usher in the new generation of console hardware or something like that, and it falls this hard on its face, it's embarrassing. Look at Anthem. Anthem was literally breaking people's consoles. Do you remember that game? And it's like, it gives the industry such a bad name. Because here's the thing, right? CDPR look like they look like an indie development studio because of their humble beginnings, you know what I mean? But at the end of the day, it's still a corporation. And corporations lie, corporations cheat, and corporations steal. Especially when CDPR games are published by none other than WB Games. Now, me and Warner, we go way back. We go way back to the first month that I was doing YouTube. We don't have to talk too much about that. But WB Games has a history of fucking up. Do you remember the Batman Arkham Knight PC port that was so bad and broken that it eventually just got pulled from Steam? Do you remember how bad Shadow of War was on PC? Do you remember how bad Shadow of War was in just trying to beat it? You had to buy in game things to basically unlock the ending. Uh, it's, I'm running out of examples already, but WB Games has a history of shitting the bed in some pretty major ways. Um, and honestly, I kind of started to expect it. You know, when reviews of this game came out and they were only allowed to record on PC. Well, no, they weren't even allowed to record. They were only allowed to play the game on PC, and they were not allowed to record their own footage for their reviews. I was just like, CDPR is kind of controlling what the general audience sees, and that is going to inform their decisions on whether or not to buy this game. That's kind of disgusting, you know? Like, CDPR is not completely without blame here. This is still on them. And like I iterated before, it just reflects so poorly on the industry. You know what I mean? Maybe this game is going to be like Destiny and it needs like 17 expansions to become playable because Destiny 2 is not that bad. But what happens when a game releases in a state like this and it still pushes 8 million copies in the first week? You're basically telling developers and publishers that it's okay. You know, I know you released a crippled child into the wild, but I'll adopt them and nurse them back to health myself. It is my responsibility as the consumer to accept what you have given me and make the best out of a bad situation. No. No. And the more we buy these busted, broken, unfinished games that get patched, I talked about this when Anthem came out, the more that we support this business model in gaming, the more of it we get. You know what some of the best games this year were? Animal Crossing. I think I actually didn't play it, but a lot of people really liked it because Nintendo games typically come out finished. Ghost of Tsushima came out finished. I had virtually no bugs with the game, and I've put dozens of hours into it. From what I'm told, The Last of Us Part 2, I mean, I've never seen it be buggy or crash or anything like that. Doom Eternal works perfectly. I have my issues with that game, but the bottom line with each of these games is they were cooked for as long as they needed to be and then released. See, and you can't even say that that's a Sony thing because typically Sony games do come out finished, but some of those games aren't even PlayStation, you know? Doom, Bethesda allowed id Software to take as much time as they needed with the game. That game got delayed almost 6 months and it came out for the better. Cyberpunk was delayed, I think, 4 times this year, and there's virtually nothing to show for it. It's not like it's this otherworldly enhanced experience. Final Fantasy VII remake, dude. Final Fantasy VII got announced like 2 years after Cyberpunk did, and they both came out this year. Final Fantasy VII, one of the best games I've ever played in my life. Cyberpunk 2077, just not. It's just not it. It's just not what people were expecting from the game, and that sucks. It really does. And I just hope that this serves as a lesson to A, never pre order, especially on PC, and B, don't get so caught up in a company's past good deeds and let that convince you that they can do no wrong. Because for the last year leading up to this game's release, anytime I asked people why they were excited for Cyberpunk 2077, it mostly came down to I love The Witcher. Well, I was excited for Destiny because I love Halo, and look where that got me. You know what I mean? And those are the same genre. You can't just expect greatness every single time somebody does something, especially when, in the case of Cyberpunk 2077, there was really nothing crazy innovative shown off. I never saw anything that made me think that the combat or the gameplay or the exploration was going to be some groundbreaking next level type shit. But it's cool that you can customize your penis, you know? I feel like some of the funding may have gone to the wrong areas. It's just I I don't know, man. In the future, I just really hope that this sort of thing can stop happening because it's giving gaming a really bad name. And like I have said in my personal life, I think in the next 10 years, the video game industry could crash again if we don't start taking precautions to avoid that sort of thing. If we don't start demanding better, video games could be in for a really bad situation. But if that were to happen, then that means indie games could take over, and that's what the Nintendo Switch and PC is for. So, all right. But all that being said, that's how I feel about the situation regarding Cyberpunk 2077. You don't have to agree with me, but let me know what you think in the comments, and I'll see you next time. I actually forgot how I end my videos. It's good to be back, though. It's good to be back. I'll see you soon.